applications. There are more products in later stage clinical trials in California than anywhere else in the world. California companies are responsible for 738 medical and biotechnologies,
You just push it and then it goes.
that works.
Oh, I see. So that's how you... Hey, are you hiding in the back? Senator Harmon? Hey, Tom. Good to see you.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see so many people here today. Welcome to this joint hearing. Thank you to Senator Corbett for participating with us and joining us in this very exciting informational hearing, and to our fellow senators and assembly members and industry representatives who've traveled here from around the state. This is the first Biotechnology Committee informational hearing of 2009. Over the next several months, we will have additional hearings in Sacramento and throughout the state to highlight the importance of the life sciences industry here in California and to learn more about the unique policy issues the industry faces. The goal of today's hearing is to provide members with an overview of the industry and discuss several priority issues facing our state's biotechnology and life sciences sectors. We are immensely fortunate to have so many biotechnology companies in California. Representing San Mateo County for the last 17 years, I've been exposed to the world's oldest and largest biotechnology sector. California's life science industry is a cornerstone of economic growth, with 2,700 biotechnology companies employing over 260,000 residents throughout the state. Our companies are responsible for 1,200 approved treatments and another 210 more on the way, making us the worldwide leader in life sciences and biotechnology advancements. From San Diego to San Francisco, California is the world leader in research, development, and commercialization of medical and biotechnologies, diagnostics, and research tools for human, agricultural, and industrial applications. There are more products in later stage clinical trials in California than anywhere else in the world. California companies are responsible for 738 treatments in Phase 2 and Phase 3 of clinical trials. There are currently 210 therapies and diagnostics traveling the pipeline toward approval and availability to patients. In the immediate future, companies will invest $50 billion in manufacturing, jobs, facilities to bring the 210 most promising treatments to fruition. It takes an average 14 years and $1.2 billion to create a single treatment after thousands of other approaches and compounds are ruled out and ruled failures. The contributions of the life sciences industry to the state of California are invaluable. It is vital to ensure this industry remains a strong driver of economic growth in California. It is particularly important in these economic times that we continue to support the growth of this industry and the innovation, life-saving treatments it provides. So I'd like to start the hearing. We have a great agenda today. I'd like the co-chair of this hearing today, Senator Corbett, if you'd like to make some comments, and then allow the other members here to say a few words if they'd like.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
There we go. I think that.
I know we have to figure out the mics first. Thank you very much, Assemblymember Hill and
Thank you to all of my colleagues that are here today as well, and good morning to all of you here in the audience and who will be presenting to us today. I'm State Senator Ellen Corbett, and I chair the Select Committee on Biotechnology. I'm pleased to welcome you and very interested in hearing what you have to say. I'm very thrilled to be working with Assemblyman Jerry Hill. He's as the newly appointed chair of the Select Committee on Biotechnology on the Assembly side. As many of you may remember, we had a close relationship with Assemblymember Jean Mullen, who previously chaired this. So I'm just thrilled that Mr. Hill is carrying on that tradition. I know he shares my passion and commitment to ensure that California stays the biotech capital of the country, or the world for that matter.
Absolutely.
And I thank him for his staff and all of their assistance and leadership on this issue and bringing us all here together. Let me also thank all of the distinguished panelists, as well as my colleagues from both houses that are here today, which is a very important statement to have people working together in both houses on this important issue. This is a great opportunity for us to come together, to learn a few new things, and also understand how we can support this vital industry and make it a priority for us here in the legislature. As chair of the Senate Select Committee on Biotechnology, I'm also pleased once again to have an opportunity to use this type of forum to highlight the extraordinary contributions that are being made by the biotech industry here in California. Assemblymember Hill has already highlighted that. Throughout my legislative tenure, including my 6 years in the Assembly and now my time in the Senate, I have been privileged to work closely with many members of the local biotech community to help foster growth and innovation here and throughout California. I have introduced legislation to create biotech institutes on local college campuses, provide manufacturing tax credits to help lure and retain business, and also have authored legislation to allow biotech companies to carry forward a net operating loss deduction for a 20-year period following the year of loss. Finally, I've worked on legislation to allow cities and counties greater flexibility in offering tax incentives to help bring biotech-related businesses to their local communities. I've always felt biotech has great promise, not only because of the scientific breakthroughs and the hope for life-saving cures, but also it is a very important part of our economy and will help us go zooming out of this recession, I hope so. And I've been talking to some of you before we started the hearing today, and I know you're going to be talking about that, how we use biotech as an opportunity to help our economy grow. These are tough times. And we are, doing what we can to make sure we can foster this important industry. We have certain challenges, and nothing that we're doing this year is easy. But I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say today for a positive note. Clearly, the industry represents an investment in the future of our state and the well-being of all Californians. And a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for being such a strong advocate and great help to the industry. It's wonderful. Now, if I'd like the Vice Chair of the Assembly Select Committee, Nathan Fletcher.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank the two chairs for convening this, Senator Corbett and Assemblyman Hill, the chairs of this committee. I'm honored to serve as the vice chair on the Assembly side of the Select Committee on Biotechnology. It's an issue that is critically important to my district. The biotechnology industry is the #1 industry in the district I represent. I'm fortunate to have one of the world's largest clusters of biotechnology, and it's a combination of a great research facility in UCSD, of some cutting-edge private research institutes like the Burnham Institute and Scripps and others, wonderful programs that help connect, actually named Connect, that help take those ideas and translate them in, and about 500 individual biotechnology companies in the San Diego area that kind of come together to form not only a tremendous boom for the local economy, but a tremendous employer. And it's an issue that is not only important to my district, but it's important to the state of California. And I feel like when we look at the future of industry and we look at the changing dynamics of the global economy, we look at the changing dynamics of innovation and technology, I feel that the biotech sector holds one of the greatest keys to economic growth, not only in California, but around the world. And so anything that our state can do to foster and grow and attract more is something that this body, the legislature, ought to take very, very seriously. Because it's not only potential life-saving cures, as was mentioned, it's not only potential jobs, but it's a diversity of jobs. You know, one of the great stories of the biotechnology field is the diversity of jobs, where you have high-end researchers and scientists, but you also have vocational ed. You have people who come out of high school, they get a skill, they come in, they have a good job with health insurance and retirement and different things. And so I really see it in so many ways as the industry of the future. And I'm pleased to play a part and be able to be here today to learn a little bit and hopefully come away with some good constructive things we can all do together to further your industry. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Assemblymember Fletcher. Would any other members like to? Assemblymember Harkey.
Hi, Assemblywoman Diane Harkey, and I too am very pleased to be here. I have straddles San Diego and Orange County, and there is a big push in both counties for this type of business. And I think whatever we can do on the state level to encourage it, via tax credits that were mentioned, R&D in particular, and the savings created here are not only in the creation of jobs and future employment, but the savings in the medical industry by preventative measures and things that we can do now that are so much cheaper. I was reading through my information, and I saw that, it used to be for AIDS patients, there were 10 pills, now we're down to 1. I cannot believe that as we start expanding on a lot of these fronts that we won't save money in the long term for all of us who are, involved in needing the medical industry. So I'm very, very pleased to see this. Venture capital is huge, and I'm glad we've got a little blurb on that. And whatever we can do to stimulate that, and that will come through business, or I should say taxation policies that we have here in the state, are going to be very important to the future of your industry. So I encourage you to work with us, and I'm very, very pleased to be here and would like to create a statewide movement and not have it segmented. I'd really like to create a state focus on this, and I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Other comments? Very good. We'll move on. Since we have a number of speakers today, if we could limit the portions and the particular sections to about 10 minutes, that would be helpful. We are going to time it because we want to get through all of the agenda before I know a lot of people have to leave and catch flights later today. So we hopefully will adjourn a little after 1 is the goal. Take about 2 hours if that works for everyone. So if we could have the first kind of discussion, we have a welcoming opening remarks by the California Healthcare Institute, Bay Bio and Biocom. It's great. Sandra, welcome. Just this section is 5 minutes, just to let you know.
Sure.
Cutting you a little short this morning.
I'll try to go as quickly as possible. Good morning, and thank you to Chairman Hill and Chairwoman Corbett for convening this joint hearing, and for the members who showed up today. We really appreciate it. I'm Sandra Pizarro, Vice President, State Government Affairs for the California Healthcare Institute. CHI was founded in 1993 as an independent organization devoted to researching and advocating policy to forward the interests of California's biomedical community. CHI has brought together California's biotechnology, pharmaceutical, diagnostics, medical device companies, as well as the state's premier universities and private research institutions under one umbrella to strengthen the voice of the life sciences industry with policymakers in Sacramento and Washington. Since that time, we've developed strong advocacy operations in both D.C. and Sacramento. We are the only statewide trade association for the life sciences in California, and we are the only trade association with full-time presence in both Sacramento and Washington, D.C. CHI has 3 primary goals: to showcase the value of the life sciences industry, to advocate for policies that promote research and development of new products in the life sciences industry, and to educate policymakers about the industry's day-to-day operations. We publish annually a California Biomedical Industry Report in January, which all of you should have received. This document is a culmination of a year-long evaluation of the industry in the state of California. We work with PricewaterhouseCoopers every year on this report, and it's a preeminent source for industry data in California, and we hope that I can assume, I'm assuming that Mr. Hill used some of this data in in his presentation, and we hope that all of you will use that throughout the year. In March, we lead an effort along with Biocom and Bay Bio to host the California Life Sciences Day in Sacramento. I know we visited several of you this year. It's an opportunity for our industry employees to meet, to come to Sacramento and learn the legislative process. And throughout the year, we invite elected officials from the legislature and the administration to visit our facilities and learn more about the industry. In conclusion, I will just say I think this is a very timely hearing. I know this is not a standing policy committee, but I would hope that at the end of this hearing, with all of the great speakers before you, that you will be a lot more informed about the industry, but also realize that the industry is a very strong economic engine for the state of California, and we need to do everything to protect it and to value it, and we need to be a part of the economic recovery of this state. And thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an overview of CHI.
Thank you very much. Chris.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hill, Senator Corbett. My name is Christopher Draper. I'm the Director of Public Policy at Bay Bio. We are the Life Sciences Trade Association representing the life sciences industry in Northern California, what we like to call the oldest, largest, and most productive life sciences cluster in the world. It's an area that we're very proud of. Bay Bio has been in existence for about 20 years now. In fact, our 20-year anniversary is going to be next year. We have three primary goals as an organization. One is a creation of a sense of community in Northern California, strengthening the voice of the industry. Number two is promotion of public policy advocacy before representatives of the state legislature, as well as our congressional delegation in Washington, D.C. And number three is creating best practices around our membership. We host a variety of events for our member companies so they can learn more about how to develop and grow their businesses. If you look at Bay Bio, we have 465 members. Our membership is representative of the industry as a whole. The average Bay Bio member company is privately held. They have less than 50 employees. They are heavily engaged in research and development efforts and are hoping to grow and become large, successful companies. 1/3 of our membership represents devices, diagnostics, and tools. A significant portion of our membership is engaged in traditional biopharmaceutical development, and we have a growing sector within Bay Bio in our membership in what is now being known as industrial biotechnology. So that spans everything from environmental applications to biofuels to agricultural applications. So we represent a fairly broad section of the industry. Our goals are to promote the industry within California, as particularly Northern California, and strengthen the opportunities for our companies to grow and be successful. We are very proud of being able to participate in this panel. We think it is an excellent thing that the state needs to be doing more of. We wish to promote more of our industry and introduce you to our companies so that you can learn more about who they are and what they do and understand their stories and what they try to do so they can be successful and contribute to the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Maureen Higgins. I'm with Sloat Higgins Jensen & Associates. Our firm represents Biocom on legislative advocacy issues at the state level. I'm happy to be here today to tell you a little more about Biocom. It is actually the largest regional biotech association in the country. We have 575 members. Most of our members are located in the San Diego and Orange County area. It's a mix of biopharmaceutical, medical device, service providers, and research institutions, many of the ones that Mr. Fletcher mentioned. We have UC San Diego, Scripps, Salk, CSU Fullerton, so we span the area from San Diego and Orange County. We do have members who exist in other part of the states and have dual memberships in CHI and in Bay Bio. We also, as Mr. Draper does, have a lot of companies who are in the early stages of R&D development. So we have a lot of the smaller companies who have not yet developed a drug for market. Biocom has many of the similar goals as the other two organizations. We have a large emphasis on public policy development and advocacy at the local level in San Diego, at the state level, and at the federal level. We have developed a issues and advocacy book, which is available online, and I can make a hard copy available to any of you. It covers a range of topics, which is indicative of the issues that we care about in our industry. Everything from development of a biologic to workforce development to water and transportation issues to intellectual property. It's available on our website at biocom.org, where you can also find policy papers that we have developed on various topics. I'll close by just making one final note. Biocom also has a 501c3 organization called the Biocom Institute, which is dedicated to bridging the gap between our companies and educational institutions. We have a number of initiatives there that we offer to try to hook up teachers and students with executives in our companies to have them learn more about the industry and place them ultimately in our companies in the future. Examples of initiatives that we do are summer internship programs. We have a scholarship program. We have a speakers bureau. Like the other two speakers, we're very happy to be here today and answer any questions you might have, and commend you for having this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Yes, Senator Keogh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Madam Chairman, co-chairs, for bringing us all together today. I just, of course, have to welcome Biocom personally. It's share that with Mr. Fletcher. The Center of Biocom and the high-tech industry in San Diego is in my Senate district, and you've done an outstanding job of raising the visibility and the issues surrounding the development and sustaining high-tech business in the area. And I particularly wonder if you wanted to comment a little bit more on your collaboration with Community College, UC, and CSU in the training of scientists and researchers and bench technicians for the industry, because I think you've really set a high standard there.
That is, again, Senator Keogh, done through the Biocom Institute. And like I mentioned, we have a variety of initiatives there. We have a full-time person who works primarily on that. And they do a number of initiatives. I guess, for example, the Summer Intern Institute, they work with learning institutions, and it's for placement of not just students, but also teachers in various learning institutions to learn more about the biotech industry, ultimately for placement in the workforce. As I mentioned, they do a scholarship program. They do a variety of educational efforts on science in general. There is an emphasis not just on the life sciences, but on general science education, because the workforce, our workforce, is going to need people that are science educated in the future. I can follow up with the committee in more detail on any of those initiatives if you're interested.
You know what might be good is letting us know what the remaining challenges are with workforce development, and where you see the gaps, because I'm sure what's happening in San Diego probably reflects conditions around the state.
Actually, Senator, we do have the person I mentioned that's full-time on that. As you know, the Pro Tem has made it a priority of workforce development.
Right.
And we have had a person come up and testify at the various committees that they have written up a document that I can get to the committee that goes through some of the gaps in the industry that they see and where they see the needs in the future. I'd be happy to make that available to members.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And just one more comment, Mr. Chairman. I know you've got a busy schedule. I was very happy to hear at least the last two speakers, I might have missed it from the first speaker, comment on biofuels, because although this is a biotechnology hearing, San Diego has a real active and growing cluster of biofuels researchers at Scripps Institute, Sapphire, and other private and public entities that are investing and researching. And in fact, I think we're kind of ground zero for the development of algae-based fuels. And I think that's very, very exciting. It's a gap that we have to fill, knowing that 40% of our carbon emissions come from on-road transportation fuels. And I think there's great potential there for investment, for business growth, for continued need for scientists and researchers, and then manufacturing when we get to that stage where we want to bring it to market. So we should all go down and visit some of the companies down there and see the big green tubes. It'd be very edifying.
And we'll be looking at this on the agenda in item number 7,
Excellent.
non-medical, so it'll be great opportunities. Other questions? So thank you. Very good. Thank you very much for the overview, and we'll move now to industry overview, for the opening remarks, the industry overview by Paul Hastings, CEO of Oncomed Pharmaceuticals. Mr. Hastings, thank you. And while you're moving up here, we're going to talk. What we're doing is having a little geographic rivalry up here, and we will.
I didn't think I was that obvious.
We will have some arm wrestling before it's over to see which area is the
And has the largest?
the largest, and which cluster is the oldest, the most. Right.
That's why I decided we'd do this statewide, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Statewide.
Mr. Hastings, welcome. Thank you for being here. I think the button, if you could.
How's that?
That's better. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. I just want to thank you for giving my entire presentation. And so what I now get to do is speak a little bit from the heart. And I will say for all of you on the panel that California is the international capital of biotechnology as well as venture capital. And I think one has to constantly remember that venture capital and biotechnology go hand in hand. And I'm not a venture capitalist. I'm a venture-backed CEO, however. Oncomed Pharmaceuticals is a 70-person startup company. This is my 4th company in California. It is my 7th company since graduating with a degree in pharmacy in 1984. So I'm what you might call a biotech warrior. I have very thick skin, and I even fare the trip to Sacramento to get beat up, not by this committee, I hope, but by others about, what we do or what we don't do and the misperceptions that are around our industry. I have to say it's great to be around people that actually understand the industry and hope that you can advocate for us, because there are so many social issues that our industry helps to promote, as well as creating drugs and charging people for those drugs. So our business is a fantastic business. I moved here in 1998 from the East Coast. I moved here because this was the capital of the biotechnology industry. Now, my husband, who I married 1 week before Proposition 8, thank you very much, is a member of the software community. He's a software developer for Google, and that's another industry we need to keep in California, but that's another story. But we're a 2-nerd family, and we intend to stay in California. And in order to stay in California, I think the environment needs to be friendly to venture capital and to the biotechnology community. So I will tell you more of a personal story about our company. Our company, Oncomed, started from a patent from the University of Michigan, and an incredible founder who is now the assistant director of the Stem Cell Institute at Stanford. But the venture community who went out to visit him in Ann Arbor, and the venture community, the guy from Genentech, that's now a venture capitalist, went to Ann Arbor, found our founder, and convinced him to move the company to California because it is the center of biotechnology, and he came with it. So a brain gain, a very bright guy who's now running part of the Stem Cell Institute at Stanford. The company, when I joined it, was about a year old. There were 17 employees, and we were located in what was probably a former 7-Eleven. It was a tiny little building. We had $3 million in the bank and a couple of patents. We hired some really bright people from Genentech and from Amgen and from Abgenic, some of these companies that have done very well, that all started, by the way. I remember when Genentech was a handful of employees. So they all started the way we did. We started this company in Mountain View, California. There was $3 million left when I joined the company, and we were very, very fortunate. We had venture capitalists that understood what we were doing, and we were able to raise money. We were able to forge a lot of alliances with pharmaceutical companies because of the talent that came out of our employee pool. And we are now 70 employees, about 68 scientists and 2 administrative people, and we intend to stay heavy on the science and on hiring people from this area to do the science for us and to not burden people with administrative blah, blah. So we're, a 70-person company. We're going to have our 5-year anniversary next week. And in 4 years, our company took a discovery, a patent, and turned it into a product that is now in human beings in phase 1 clinical trials. Patients with cancer, colorectal cancer, ovarian cancer, brain cancer, are on our product in phase 1 clinical trials to determine whether it's safe. Now, despite the fact that we've raised $220 million Now, all of that wasn't venture money. That was also going to pharmaceutical companies and getting them to partner with us because of where we are and what we do. You know, it is going to take us until 2017 and probably $1 billion to get that drug to the market. Now, I'm not complaining about that and asking for money, but to have an environment here that's friendly for that so that I can raise money for the scientists that work in our company is what I'm really here to ask you to stay involved in and stay on top of it. As you know, we employ more people than the Hollywood film industry, and we employ people that are highly educated, and we employ people that come out of some of these technical programs to work in our facilities. So we want to keep it here. We want to keep this industry strong, and we're all very socially alert individuals and want to help California in any way that we can. So thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Hastings. That was very informative and very enlightening. Thank you. Comments or questions? Yes, Senator Harmon.
I just would be interested in hearing your views on your opinion of what the legislature can do to help companies like yours stay in California, grow in California, and prosper in California.
Right.
Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Keep the venture capital community focused on California. And the way to do that is to continue to pay attention to biotechnology and emerging technologies, because we are also, you know, have clean tech members and other members in the biotechnology community. And I think the way to do that is pretty simple. So we have this NOL carry forward that we have been talking about. We came here not asking for a handout. We came here asking for an incentive for our future. And to keep that on the table would be very nice. The single sales factor for companies like Genentech, to keep facilities in Vacaville to employ the people that come out of that Vacaville Vocational Technology Center and go to work there. That's what we need. So nothing fancy, just a recognition that we're here, and also to stay up to date on what other states are doing. Because when you look at some of the incentives that states are throwing out there, and poor states as well, to attract and bring biotechnology to them, what we want to do is keep people here. So, you know, we're already in a wonderful place to live. I think everybody appreciates that, but I think just showing a little bit of love here and there is a nice thing for our industry.
Very good, thank you. Yes.
You mentioned single sales factor, which was recently enacted, and we hear a lot about that as it relates to the large companies and the big companies. You clearly have a history of doing small startups and moving them on, and so I'm curious your thoughts on how things like that benefit. You know, are they a benefit to the smaller companies, and if so, how?
Absolutely. So first of all, I come from, when I graduated from pharmacy school, I went to work for the company that just bought Genentech, Hoffman LaRoche, and I was there for 8 years. If it wasn't for Genentech, I wouldn't be standing here, because Genentech started the cluster, and they started as a company. You know, Herb Boyer and a couple of other folks started this thing. The CEO, Art Levinson, was there from the beginning, and he would have been able to talk about Genentech 20 years ago the way that I'm talking about Oncomed today. So to have a cluster where you have Genentech and Gilead and now Takeda's in South San Francisco and other companies that are moving here to be where the science is very important for us. So things to keep them here. Now, I also worked at Chiron, which was a major biotechnology company like Genentech that got bought by Novartis. We also had a facility in Vacaville. When you make your decisions on, you know, where you're going to build a facility, you look at all sorts of things. And those things need to be favorable for you from a tax point of view, as well as from other points of view where you want your company to be and what have you. So most of the employees in Oncomed, most of the employees in the companies you're going to hear from today came out of Chiron, Genentech, Amgen, Abgenix. And having those larger companies forming the cluster. If you look at Boston, they have Genzyme, they have Vertex, they have Biogen IDEC. They have a number of, I was just there a couple weeks ago going to their CEO meeting because I was once in Boston, and they invited me back. And their cluster is very strong. They have a strong commercial base of companies like the Genzymes and the Biogen IDEX, and then they have a cluster building like we do here of startup companies. So that's why what you do for them helps us.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Mr. Hastings. Appreciate it. And just looking at the next hearing that we have, I think the focus will be on competitiveness and how California can lead the way and continue to lead the way with certain opportunities. So that will be the second hearing as we move forward. The next speaker will be, is it Jeff Ike? Director Amgen. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Okay, is this on? Good. Let me just.
Talking about biotechnology venture capital.
Okay, great. Members, thank you very much for the opportunity to come up and speak today. My name is Jeff Ike. I'm a director at Amgen Incorporated, which is a company that 30 years ago was a couple of buildings in a former ranch with sheep on it, and is now the world's largest biotech company. It's a company that many times in its history was within 6 months of being out of cash and out of business, and has survived through a fair amount of hard work and help and some good luck to become a very large company. But we're still very tied to our roots. We're still very tied to this state, California. And what I'd like to talk about a little bit today is the role that venture capital plays in what I would define as a food chain. It is a combination of government, academia, small biotech, large biotech, all focused, all with very dedicated people committed to improving lives and finding cures for disease. So there is in the news frequently breakthroughs in biotech, but I think the starting point, which is important to set the ground on, is the fact that this industry has had some breakthroughs, but they are few and far between. This is a very, very expensive proposition to discover new therapies, to test them, determine that they are effective, and importantly, that they're safe. And it takes a tremendous amount of time and money to do that. And so what you see here is that there's a very small select group of companies which are sometimes in the headlines that have found breakthroughs in healthcare. But there are so many companies, small companies, which are just starting, which are just starting to turn a revenue, which are just now going public in order to gain access to public capital. And it's so, again, we can't forget the fact that there are many, many, many small companies that form a really important part of innovation in healthcare. So what's neat about venture capital is that it is somewhat of a unique investor. Frequently we see that the public companies are measured on very short intervals, and what's neat about venture capital is it's a long-term investor. So these are investors that are focused on the 3 to 8 year horizon, which is really a long time when you think of sort of quarterly analysis of companies. You see here 2 pictures of Pitch Johnson and Bill Bowes, who were 2 of the venture capitalists who helped Amgen at critical points in its history. And as an example, Bill Bowes also helped AMD and also Cisco to find their way. Why is that important? Because in California, the 2 largest industries, the largest is, of course, technology, and the second largest industry in the state is biomedical. So I think that the role of venture capital in our economy and in the success of our economy is profound. Also, venture capital targets innovative companies, and it also nurtures them. It's a bit of an incubator. So it can also help in terms of not just bringing funding to companies that need funding, but also helping to coach the management team, to bring in expertise to surround the innovation and the new idea. So how does it work? Well, it starts really in 1980. 2 fundamental things happened in 1980. The Supreme Court ruled that you can patent a protein. That was a landmark beginning of the biotech industry. And the very same year, Senators Bayh and the first Senator Bayh and Senator Dole created the Bayh-Dole Act, which allowed companies that had discovered things, had brought innovation to bear using government funds and grants, could privatize that. And the idea was that we had gone through a period in the 70s with a recession. We were concerned about preserving the science base in our country and advancing our technologies. And this was a way where we could put all forces to bear together, public, private, in order to advance science in the U.S. And what you see here is a life cycle that starts with the innovation, largely in academic organizations, research organizations, and some companies that have the ability to do R&D. and then it moves to a small biotech. And so Paul mentioned the history of Oncomed. This is sort of where this all begins, and then there's growth that comes through venture capital, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that happens. Eventually, the drugs go into clinical testing, phase 1 and phase 2, and then the venture capital exits with either an IPO or the company being acquired. Frequently, you'll see a need to partner because, again, these pivotal clinical trials can cost hundreds, if not billions, in terms of dollars spent in a pivotal trial. And this is familiar for most people. This is where Genentech partners with Lilly, with Roche, Amgen partners with Kirin and J&J in our formative years to be able to complete this cycle. And then again, the end state, of course, is that these drugs go into patients who have grievous illness, and it makes a difference in their lives. And that's the cycle that this is a part of. And it started with legislators. It moves in both public and private money, and it results in drugs for patients. So we talked a little bit about the hurdle in terms of how much time does this take. Well, you can see that it can take between 12 and 16 years. What's important to note also is the post-marketing aspects. So especially in biotech, we watch these molecules very carefully in patients even after approval. So the FDA does a lot of things like priority reviews that help them accelerate the review of a drug to get it into a patient population that's in desperate need of a cure or a therapy. And we watch them very carefully. It's also important to note that many of these don't become blockbusters. Most of these projects never even make it to market. They go away due to some problem in the long development cycle. So this is a high-risk and long-term investment, and venture capital plays a significant role in this. I just want to put briefly in perspective maybe how the money sorts out. Approximately $29 billion per year is invested by NIH in research, and also a very similar number is invested by academic institutions in research and development. So each of those sort of $28 billion numbers per year is across the United States, and each $28 billion results in about $100 of investment per citizen in the U.S. Public corporations using money gained from the sale of stock contribute another approximately $28 billion. So you have really $300 per U.S. citizen being dedicated in research. Venture capital brings about $11 billion, of which largely 40% of that money comes into investments in California. So when you think about the role that this plays...
Would you mind repeating those numbers again on the difference between the venture capital and the government money?
Sure, and these are cited in the recent bio study, but it's about $28 billion that comes in from a combination of academic research, another $28 billion from the NIH, and another $28 billion or so just from California biotech companies, publicly traded biotech companies alone. So each of those results in about $100 per U.S. citizen in research per year, and then venture capital brings in about $11 billion per year, and 40% of that is invested in California. So both from the publicly traded corporations and the venture capital focus on California, you can see how important the research and development engine is in California. And I would also cite that another leading indicator of why this is going to be a real positive part of California for many years to come is that we lead the United States in numbers of patents that are approved from California innovations every year by a very significant measure. So innovation and research and development is alive and well, but what's important to note is it comes at a cost. And so as we do focus on healthcare reform and how we need to increase access and lower costs, it's important also to note that we can't strangle the engine of innovation. And California is such a vital part of that, which just really makes me excited that this committee is here today and considering these issues. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
So what I wanted to depict here, there's three phases of early research for biologics: discovery, development, and commercialization. And all I want you to take away from the slide here is that venture capital forms the bridge. It's a central link in the food chain. Grants, public money, universities and academia, and small biotechs, and also the research arms of large biotechs form the discovery area. And there is a significant influx of cash needed in development. It's very, very expensive to run these clinical trials. And that's where venture capital comes in and bridges all aspects of this. So again, it forms the bridge in the food chain. It's an important link in the food chain. So I just wanted to end with a positive note, but it's a cautious note. And that is, we've talked about how important venture capital is. I think it's just important also to note that in the current conditions that we have in our economy, both in the U.S., and around the world, and in California, there is not a lot of liquidity. And so this is a resource, venture capital is a resource that is waning right now for a number of different reasons. The previous speaker alluded to some of the concerns and things that legislature and legislators can do for biotech in California. It's just important to note that this is a market which watches very carefully what's happening in the industry. And so different changes in the industry, different changes in the valuation of a biotech discovery can materially affect the amount of venture capital that's invested in our industry. So that's really a brief overview of venture capital and its role in this inherently Californian industry. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have
Yes, Senator.
What role do you see universities playing in this, and how do they interact with the work that you do? I'm concerned because as there are cutbacks in private university endowments or grants, as the state is looking at very, very deep cuts to the University of California, our research engine,
Right.
It troubles me because it seems to me that we do want to have that front-end input of the discoveries that you can then pick up on.
Well, I think academia plays an absolutely vital role. And academic institutions investing in research and development in partnership, and there's so many partnerships where companies will partner with an academic institution on an innovation and provide both the ability to add additional scientists to the mix, to add capital to allow experiments to be conducted and trials to be conducted. It's really a very critical and vital role. I think maybe the most important part of your question is, what is the role of the scientist? He or she are absolutely the most vital part of this industry because it's those discoveries, it's those key innovations that are the necessary part to this entire food chain. Without the actual innovation, without the idea, without the person who spends Saturdays and Sundays in her lab running experiments to finally break through and say, okay, I found a target and now I have a key for that target. All of the rest of it is nice to have, but without that innovation and that spark and that idea, none of this goes any further. So I think it's absolutely critical.
I had just another
Of course.
question. Could you describe the world of venture capital a little bit? Is it individual people who've made money in some area and who get interested in this? Is it companies? Are there clusters of venture capital firms?
There are all
How does that
kinds.
work?
It's really interesting. I mean, it's everything that you've just described. There are what are called angel investors, who are sometimes entrepreneurs who want to do something for society, and it's a way to advance a critical cure, and they play a role early on, sometimes between $500,000 and $1 million investment in a company. You have philanthropic organizations, and of course no one can avoid mentioning the Gates Foundation that just does a tremendous amount for humanity. It's really a combination, and what's neat about venture capital is venture capital kind of organizes them and directs them onto some of the most important innovations and discoveries. So venture capital is a bit of an organizing function among many, many partners, limited partners, who have all kinds of different sources of capital that they want to invest in innovation.
Ms. Harkey?
Just to further address the senator's question, the big hope of venture capitalists is the company will become public, and it's a wonderful way to get banks won't go invest in this, and it's very difficult to get money and capital for ideas that haven't proven, especially you see that timeline that they have to go through. So it is a big risk, but if somebody is willing and believes in a product and those who are behind it, it attracts quite a variety of takers, and their hope is to go public.
Yeah,
to
and
really
that's a
make
really
it work.
important point, is that they invest where the risks are so high that few other organizations or entities would invest. And it happens with that 90% failure rate over 12 plus years that makes it so risky.
Jeff, a question on the, you're talking about the 47% reduction in dollars and 37% in deals in the fourth quarter of 2008. Is there an expectation in the industry or a fear in the industry that when those dollars come back or when the venture capital investment is ready to be made, that will remain in California, or is there a concern that it may go elsewhere in the world?
There is a risk. Biotechnology is, and we're very proud of this, a Californian industry. Starting in the late 70s, this is absolutely this state's one of many of the state's contributions to humanity. I think there are a lot of states that now see biotechnology as a harbinger of the future in terms of medicine and healthcare, and there are a lot of states that are very proactively looking at luring and recruiting biotech into the central states and the Atlantic seaboard. I think that the risk is mostly around preserving the ability for an innovation to make it to a market in which patients can use it. And if we do that, I think everything else will resolve itself. But I do think that you raise a great point, that there are many states that are interested and many countries that are interested in pulling biotech innovation out of the United States, out of California.
Very good, and I think that will be part of our next discussion at the next hearing, but I think it's a valid point. Seeing no further questions, Jeff, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Keogh.
Just before you leave us, do you have any idea at this point if what the President's proposing as far as more oversight of the financial markets will impact venture capital or the ability to make investments?
I really don't. I think certainly our leadership has committed its support to what the President is proposing along with Congress. We think it's an important an issue for Americans to resolve, and I don't know any of the specifics around oversight at this point.
Thank you. It'd be interesting to see if there's a chill or not. It seems as though that line pretty generally reflects the economy.
I think that's right. I think it does reflect partially the economy.
Good. Jeff, thank you again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll move on to technology transfer in California. Douglas Crawford, Associate Director, California Institute of Quantitative Biosciences, UC San Francisco, Mission Bay campus. Doug, it's great to see you again. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Doug, it's great to see you again. Thank you for being here.
Great. Thank you very much, Senator Corbett, Assemblyman Hill. This is a great opportunity. I would like, and I promise not to use the B word today, and actually I want to tell a very sanguine story about the positive work that's coming out of the University of California that is the fruit of your investments over the last, particularly in the last decade, in the California Institutes of Science and Innovation. But before I do, you know, the University of California is asked to do a lot of things. And we speak about those other things, education, public service, but today our focus is about innovation, about technology transfer. And so I just want to bring to the committee's attention something you probably already know, which is that the University of California is an absolute powerhouse in research nationally and internationally. 5 of our campuses are in the top 20 institutions in the country in research dollars. And our faculty include 55 Nobel Prize winners. I mean, just on any axis by which you want to measure the power of the University of California to innovate, we're winners. But I think today, particularly, the axis that I'd like you to think about is the potency of the university to be able to drive economic growth, to bring great companies to existence. And so it's come up a couple times already, but I'll retell the story. A faculty member, this sort of cherubic, 70s looking academic, and the figure here was Herb Boyer, persuaded at great length by a 29-year-old venture capitalist to have a meeting. Herb, being a traditional academic, said, I'm too busy. They said, okay, 10 minutes. That 10 minutes turned into 3 hours, ended with beer, lots of decisions, including an investment on each of them to create a company called Genentech, which today employs about 11,000 people, has 15 products on the market. And importantly, that meeting was so pivotal to the fate of Genentech that they immortalized it in a full-size bronze sculpture on their campus. And it's always worth noting that I've had thousands of meetings. None of them have yet made it to a bronze sculpture, but we remain hopeful. So that history was importantly repeated many, many times since. And Jeff made that point. It was inspiring for an entire sector of entrepreneurs, inventors in the university, and company creators to recapitulate that model. And it continues to happen today. And here's just a handful of companies from my backyard. Most of these are QB3 faculty members that spin out. Just want to give you a flavor. You know, a breakthrough company in oncology just left our campus last summer. Zumi is the first adult cell conversion back to pluripotent stem cells. It's a therapeutics company spun out of the Gladstone Institute. Catalyst Biosciences, a whole new way of approaching therapeutics using proteins as catalysts. And Amyris, importantly, I know I've heard already from the committee, there's a lot of interest in the University of California in energy, and Amyris was one of the first companies in the space spun out of QB3 Berkeley, UC Berkeley. So that pattern that the Herb Boyer set in motion has been repeated. The state recognized that, and I'm here today in part to thank you for your forethought. In almost a decade ago, the state put aside about $400 million to create 4 institutes of science and innovation. And the idea was, the University of California is doing great work. Could it do more? Could we create focused institutes around areas that we think will be promising for the future of innovation, nanotechnology, communications, information technology, and importantly today, biotech? Can we create institutes that would be even more significant generators of new companies and new ideas? So you all very kindly, generously made an investment, as I say, about a decade ago of $400 million with a requirement for a 2-to-1 match. We had to go out and seek industry, donor support, foundation support for these institutes. So it's over $1 billion collective effort on the state to create centers of innovation. And QB3 now has gorgeous buildings, and I'd love to invite the committee to do a hearing or visit us at any point in, say, our Mission Bay campus. And almost as importantly, though, as the money was that the state gave us a mandate. First, do great science. We think that comes naturally to the University of California. But secondly, make sure that the fruit of that work makes it to market as quickly as possible. And so we are measured. We're really the only science institutes within the University of California that are measured on our ability to impact the bioeconomy. So let's talk about that. So first, as a thumbshell, we're about 200 faculty members, great facilities, and importantly, we're also dedicated to collaboration, cross-discipline, cross-campus, and collaborations between industry and the academic sector. So that's sort of in a thumbnail. And if you were to ask me the kind of science we work on, well, fortunately, I won't dive deeply because we'd be here for days. It's 200 faculty members working on areas as diverse as pure mathematics through to human magnetic resonance imaging. It's intentionally diverse in order to bring people together across discipline. But just one thing I'd mention is that biology is making a transition to a whole new approach where we stop asking how nature created systems, but how can we convert naturally occurring systems to solve society's problems? How can we make biology a synthetic engineering platform that we can use to our general benefit? And this is going to have impact across a broad spectrum of requirements, new materials, new therapeutics, new chemicals, but importantly, new sources of energy. And QB3 and the University of California are very much at the forefront of this work. We hosted a meeting in Hong Kong last year to bring together all the people in the world working in this space, and it was obvious at that meeting that the Bay Area and California in general, forgive me, senators and assembly members from San Diego have a regional bias. I'll get in that arm wrestle later. It's playing a dominant role in this emerging field of synthetic biology. So But the point about this session, I think, vis-a-vis the academic, and Senator Hancock, your question got very much to this, which is, how are we making sure that the fruits of that work are getting out of the university and out to society? And we're interested in this for a number of levels, but I think the most important one is we need to benefit society. That's what Californians have asked us to do. Yes, we bring back revenue to the state in form of license revenues, to the University of California in form of license revenues on technologies that we transfer, but that really proves to be almost an inconsequential piece of the overall puzzle. What really matters are those 11,000 employees at Genentech and the products that they've brought to market to serve patients. A kind of a philosophical point, the university is absolutely critical to innovation, but almost nothing we do can benefit patients directly. It almost always requires the expertise, the financial investment, and the diligence of an industry partner to carry it from the university through to a patient or a public need. And if we put barriers between those transitions that make that transition difficult, less of the fruit will get forward. So we've organized QB3 specifically to be able to mine more of the good stuff out of the university. We have a set of scientists, which I'll introduce in a second, who go out and find the best technologies, nurture it through to a stage at which it's more ready for commercialization, and then we actually get involved in trying to help create companies. So we have a team of scientists. This may seem trivial. A team of scientists who are full-time dedicated to making QB3 more than some of the parts, but it's very unusual in an academic setting to have scientists working to leverage university resources to bring more benefit forward. So this is a pretty novel team. Reg Kelly is its progenitor. He very much wanted to be here today, but a competing meeting that he's hosting on technologies that can lower the cost of health care, which Ms. Arkey brought up before, is something that we're very keenly interested in. So Rich Kelly couldn't be here. So what do? Well, we provide a whole sequence of mentoring facilities for our faculty members and emerging entrepreneurs. And importantly, we also are providing information flows back from society, back from the clinic to help guide that basic research in the right direction. We've also gone out and raised substantial amounts of philanthropic funds to fund projects that are too late for the NIH and too early for commercialization. So things that are caught in the classic valley of death, we can help bring them forward, and we're doing that not only on the public funds, but we're reaching out to private donors to do that. And then we're building great partnerships with industry. And I should just mention that one of the things we're very proud of is that we've reached out to our industry partners, established mutually beneficial collaborations with industry. We manage those relationships so that both parties get what they want out of the partnership. Traditionally, oftentimes there are variance in the interests of the two parties and frustration, and we've successfully managed large collaborations, including Pfizer. Another footnote point worth making that Jeff touched on, which is the innovation is not becoming flat. Innovation is really increasingly clustering around these centers of academic excellence. And so we've seen the migration of pharmaceutical R&D from New Jersey and Connecticut and Indianapolis and other disaggregated places to these new centers of innovation. And I'm proud to report today that Pfizer is building a dedicated research facility in the Mission Bay campus in San Francisco. They're closing 3 facilities down worldwide, and they're building a brand new facility. They want to be near the innovative capacity of the University of California. Finally, we try to help start companies. We set aside a small amount of space in our new Mission Bay building. It's for an incubator. It's the first technology incubator in the University of California system, and it's only 2,500 square feet, and our great claim to fame is we rent micro amounts of space, as small as 120 square feet. Sounds like a recipe for a non-entity, right? Little companies, they're not going to become anything, right? Well, our experience has been exactly the opposite. We've had 10 companies in, 2 more are moving in presently. In 3 years, we'll have 12 companies in the garage. 4 of those companies have already gone on to close venture capital rounds, and 1 of those companies was acquired by Affymetrix for $25 million. It is possible to stimulate the transition of innovation out of the university to small companies and then on to successful larger companies, and we are very proud to be playing a part of that. And I just thought I'd give you the face of that. So the young woman in the middle wrote an SBIR grant for $100,000 while still in a lab at QB3 Berkeley. It was funded. She moved into our garage. Almost 2 years later, she and her partners were able to raise a $6.8 million round led by Kodiak Ventures. They now are in South San Francisco. They have 23 employees. They're shipping 2 products. It's a terrific story. And it is the young, energetic entrepreneurs leaving the university who are also the talent pool that we get to draw upon. And so with that, I'll conclude and just thank the committee once again for your interest in this space. This is very important, critical both to the needs of Californians and to the growth out of the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford. Questions of the panel? Seeing none, thank you. And I did have the opportunity to visit, and what a wonderful, wonderful facility to see QB3 and the entire campus. It was just outstanding. So thank you again for that wonderful tour.
You're all welcome back again. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Promise of the Pipeline. Greg Landis, Vice President of Antibody Research for Takeda, San Francisco. Good morning, or good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the committee for this opportunity to speak and share with you Takeda's vision for the future. As was described earlier, my name is Greg Landis. I'm Vice President of Takeda San Francisco. Takeda's pipeline and its promise is a product of our history, our community work environment, and our talent pool. Today, I would like to let you know who Takeda is, what is our community relationship between Takeda and California, and finally on an update on Takeda San Francisco's leveraging of our history, our community relationship, and talent pool to create the next generation of superior medicines to treat persons with cancer, inflammatory disease, and cardiovascular disorders. What I hope to convey to you today is an expansive view of the full potential of the biotechnology pipeline beyond the acceleration and the precision of the discovery of cures and treatments, but also, in fact, a broader and more economic and community promise for the pipeline. Takeda Pharmaceutical Company Limited is the largest and most respected pharmaceutical company in Japan. The company was founded in 1781 and is now a global organization of over 19,000 employees. Takeda's 4 core therapeutic areas include lifestyle-related diseases, such as oncology and neurological disorders, CNS diseases, and gastroenterological disorders. Recognized products from Takeda include Prevacid for treatment of peptic ulcers, Lupron Depot for treatment of prostate cancer and endometriosis, Actos for the treatment of diabetes, and Blowpress for the treatment of hypertension, and Velcade, finally, for the treatment of multiple myeloma and mantle cell lymphoma. Takeda operates 9 research facilities and 6 worldwide sites for production. Takeda has 7 sites in the United States, and its R&D investment for 2008 was $4.6 billion. As part of Takeda's globalization initiative, centers of excellence have been created throughout the world, including Takeda Cambridge in Singapore, and 3 centers in California comprised of Takeda Research Investments in Palo Alto, Takeda San Diego, and Takeda San Francisco. In addition to these 3 California locations of centers of excellence, Takeda also has an additional site in Irvine, California for healthcare professionals employed by Takeda Pharmaceuticals of North America. Collectively, nearly 350 California residents are employed by Takeda, and we intend to grow to be larger in this state. Takeda's contributions to California's healthcare is noteworthy, as indicated by more than 12,000 uninsured residents receiving greater than $6.2 million worth of Takeda medicines free or at discounted prices. Furthermore, Takeda rebated the state of California more than $52 million for its products that were prescribed to Medicaid patients over the last 2 years. Finally, Takeda paid California more than $1.7 million in corporate taxes last year, and also, in fact, leases over 150,000 square feet of office and research space at 4 different locations. Takeda San Francisco is Takeda's newest center of excellence. Our focus is biologics with emphasis on antibody-based medicines. Our goal is to become a global player in therapeutic antibodies with activities that encompass discovery, engineering, and early-stage process development. To achieve this goal requires rapid and parallel creation of a variety of activities, including both facilities, staff, and technologies. To this end, TSF leased our building shell in South San Francisco in November of 2007, hired our first employee in March of 2008, and grew the headcount to 50 employees over the last year. Furthermore, we've developed 30,000 square feet of finished lab and office space in South San Francisco. By this time next year, we expect to be over 100 people and have greater than 60,000 square feet of office and lab space. TSF's labor and benefit expense through March of this year is $5.7 million, and our median salary is $119,000 with a mean of $102,000. TSF is entering biologics at a time when the antibody technology platform is mature and the drug discovery opportunity is increasing. Antibody medicines provide a unique drug modality that is applicable to multiple disease indications. Antibody drugs have shown to be highly specific towards their molecular target with low off-target associated toxicities. Antibodies meet the expectations for targeted therapies. Furthermore, antibody drugs can act through more than one mechanism to directly or indirectly alter the pathophysiological consequences of disease. Biologics, preclinical development, and clinical proof of concept are generally faster than that of small molecules. To date, there are just 22 approved antibody drugs, and those are directed to only 15 molecular targets. We think the area and the opportunity is still prime for cultivation of new drugs. For treating patients with cancer, half of the top oncology drugs are recombinant antibodies. Similarly, blockbuster biologics have provided significant benefits for patients affected with inflammatory disorders such as arthritis, psoriasis, and inflammatory bowel disease. Our selection of South San Francisco, the birthplace of technology, should not be a surprise to you. With our aggressive goals and expectations to deliver on our pipeline promises, Takeda has had to select a site where we can, in fact, build an IND engine where the talent and the experience was there and ready to run the engine. TSF has taken advantage of South City to recruit exceptional scientific leaders, researchers, and administrators while working in a community and state that respects and appreciates our vocation to discover and our advocation to improve the health and quality of mankind. TSF is building a young and vibrant antibody target and drug discovery portfolio to populate global Takeda's clinical pipeline. Through in-licensing and acquisition, Takeda has already advanced 2 antibody drug candidates into the clinic and has another 2 biologic program in mid-stage preclinical development. Furthermore, internal discovery efforts at TSF have progressed another 4 programs to mid-stage preclinical development, with another 5 programs at the hit identification and characterization stage. Our disease focus is in oncology and in inflammatory diseases. We have established 2 funded drug discovery collaborations with Zoma and Galaxy Biotech, both of California. And in addition to that, we've also signed several research collaborations, including a newly signed one with UCSF. These 3 corporate and academic relationships will be supported by Takeda in excess of $4 million this year. At Takeda, we understand that your committee will be examining California's national and global competitiveness in future hearings. We encourage your careful consideration of possible implements to the fulfillment of the full promise of the biotechnology pipeline for California, and will plan on participating in this examination. TSF's future is bright, our company is growing, and our pipeline is being filled. With ingenuity, perseverance, and the support of our parent corporation and California community, may the promises that we make today be the therapeutic successes of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions? Thank you. We're very fortunate to have Takeda here, especially in South San Francisco. That's Northern California, I think.
You have a location in San Diego, I believe, as well?
Yeah, Decatur, San Diego.
A growing one?
Yeah, two in Northern
Southern
California.
California. That's Southern California.
That arm wrestling will be fun this afternoon. We'll now move on to non-medical applications of biotechnology, and John Ballesteros, Director of External Affairs for LS9. John, welcome.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, and members, my name is John Ballesteros, and I am the Director of External Affairs for LS9. And it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon with you to share with you how a number of companies, including LS9, and our sister companies in advanced biofuels, are using the power of biotechnology to help find ways to combat climate change, reduce dependence on foreign oil, and create green tech jobs here in California. By way of background, LS9 is headquartered and operating a pilot plant and labs in South San Francisco, though we do have friends down in Southern California. And we are creating a technology platform that converts renewable raw materials into fuels and chemicals that are low carbon and cost competitive. Over the next few minutes, I'd like to outline LS9's technology, share information about our products, and answer some of your questions. Well, LS9 is employing a cutting-edge technology, and our sister companies in this space are employing similar technologies. Well, it is cutting-edge. It is based on a process that has been evolving in nature for millions of years, and it's operating right now in our bodies as we sit here. Right now, there are microbes in our stomachs that are converting the food we eat into energy. Some of that energy is burned right away, and some of it is converted into another energy source that most of us hope will be burned later, and that's fat. LS9 scientists have developed a technology platform that takes these same microbes and uses a variety of feedstocks and converts them into another form of energy sources, and those are diesel and gasoline. That conversion process, when compared to conventional processes, garner a number of benefits, environmentally and economic benefits. That same platform can also be used to create sustainable chemicals. So our advanced biofuels products are transportation fuels that are designed to overcome a number of the challenges that have been faced by first-generation biofuels, and one of those is infrastructure compatibility. LS9 products are designed to be chemically identical to the fuels that are used in the economy of California and the United States today. And what that means is that they can be delivered to customers using the existing infrastructure, so without any modification. At the same time, they can be placed into existing engines without modification and perform. In fact, LS9's first product, LS9's Ultra Clean Diesel, has been tested in engines, a variety of diesel engines, and it has performed flawlessly. And we have had a number of tests done by third parties that confirm that it's ready to be used on-road applications. And we're not the only company in our space that does this. There are a number of companies that have achieved these same milestones. In addition to infrastructure compatibility, there are environmental benefits when compared to conventional forms of transportation fuels. These include an 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions when you look at the overall life cycle of the production of these fuels. Our product contains no carcinogens and only trace amounts of sulfur. Our production schedule is quite aggressive. We are producing our fuels in our pilot plant right now in South San Francisco, and we anticipate demonstrating commercial scale production in 2010 with full production on the commercial level in 2013. As I said, in addition to fuels, we are making sustainable chemicals that offer significant benefits that rival those in the transportation fuels sector. And we have established a strategic partnership with Procter & Gamble to help deliver these to the world market. That being said, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to share with you how biotechnology and our sister companies and LS9 are working to use biotechnology to combat climate change, reduce dependence on foreign oil, and create jobs. We are currently creating jobs here in California, both in Northern California and our sister companies in Southern California. And if you or your staff would like to learn more about what we're doing, please feel free to come down and visit our facilities, and we'd be happy to give you a tour. Be happy to answer any questions.
Committee members, any questions for this witness? Thank you very much. Our next speakers will be Ryan Goldstein from ITSRX, Director of Trade and Government Relations, and Amy Hammerton MedImmune, Government Affairs Manager, speaking about specialty pharmacies. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Hill, Senator Corbett, and members for the opportunity to participate in today's hearing. My name is Ryan Goldstein. I'm the Director of Trade and Government Relations for ITSRX Pharmacy, a closed-door specialty pharmacy located in Los Angeles. ITS Pharmacy provides specialty medications to patients suffering from chronic illnesses such as hepatitis C, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, RSV, and other debilitating diseases. ITS Pharmacy began operations in Burbank over a decade ago, and since 2005 has served over 1,500 beneficiaries of Medi-Cal programs and has dispensed nearly 9,000 prescriptions. I'd like to outline specialty pharmacy model and how it differs from the retail brick-and-mortar pharmacy model. ITS Pharmacy specifically assists patients who have complex and chronic diseases, which there are few alternative therapies. Many of the prescription biologic therapies provided by ITSRX Pharmacy cannot be dispensed through the traditional pharmacy. As a specialty pharmacy, we provide these biologics to doctors, hospitals, and patients through overnight delivery. Since many of the biologic therapies are not available at your traditional pharmacies, it's necessary for ITS to coordinate with physicians, nursing agencies, and patients to coordinate the receipt and administration of the therapy. ITSRX, as well as other specialty pharmacies nationwide, are making efforts to strides to help state governments understand the difference in products and services provided by specialty pharmacies as compared to retail or mail-order pharmacies. As defined by Armada Healthcare, which is a specialty pharmacy channel management organization and group purchasing organization, specialty pharmacy is the practice of dispensing complex therapies delivered by expert healthcare practitioners to patients with a chronic and acute illnesses. This model coordinates condition-specific core services designed to improve patient access and achieve optimal clinical and economic outcomes. I'd like to provide for you one example and walk you through the process of how we process a prescription. And I'm going to use Synagis as an example, which is a biologic treatment for respiratory syncytial virus, or better known as RSV. The Synagis verification process is very complex and time-consuming from the receipt of the script from a physician. ITS coordinates with the provider, patient, and payer to ensure the seamless delivery of the drug. Authorization, even when required indications for treatment, may take up to 7 days. Many payers require medical directors to review information. Even with complete information and valid prescription, will require medical records and a letter of medical necessity from the treating physician. This often delays the process, and ITSRX does its best to minimize that delay so patients can be treated on time. We also need to submit patient weight on a monthly basis, as this is a treatment for premature babies, and their weight is changing monthly. A majority of payers require authorizations continually for Synagis throughout the course of therapy, possibly causing a delay in the child's treatment. Again, ITS does what they can to minimize this. We work with parents and healthcare providers to schedule the injections and appointments, whether that be in the physician's office, at a home infusion center, or through home care agencies. ITS has a connection with biotech in that many new drugs in development today are high-cost, high-maintenance biologic drugs manufactured by biotech companies that typically specialize in the development of biologics for niche disease states or therapeutic categories. It's critical that states understand the role of specialty pharmacies in improving patient access to these drugs, while at the same time using their expertise to decrease disease progression, adhere to drug therapy guidelines, improve patient compliance, and reduce product waste. This brings up cost reduction to the state, to insurers, and to patients. ITS Pharmacy firmly believes that the appropriate use of pharmaceuticals in prevention and treatment of chronic diseases will maintain patient health, to minimize the need for expensive therapeutic modalities such as hospitalization to manage medical conditions. ITS patients typically require significant and personal pharmacist staff attention for issues relating to appropriate storage, drug preparation, and administration of complex, costly biologics. In addition, patients need extensive assistance in complying with physician instructions and with side effect management. This high level of patient support is not only time-consuming and requires specialized staff training, but also is expensive. It comes at a cost that would not be conducive to the state's reimbursement system should any cuts to the Medi-Cal programs be made. This is what brings me here today, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this panel, and we welcome the opportunity to be a resource for the committee and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. Appreciate it. And Amy? Good
Mr.
afternoon.
Hill, Mr. Fletcher's a member of the committee. My name is Amy Hammerton. I'm the Government Affairs Manager for MedImmune. MedImmune is a leading biological company headquartered in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And to add to the Northern-Southern California debate, I would add that we have 3 facilities, all located in Northern California, one residing in Senator Corbett's district and another residing in Assemblyman Fong's district. And we welcome all of you to come visit us at any
We're
time.
happy to hear that. Thank you.
We are the manufacturer of 2 products. One is the only needle-free influenza vaccine on the marketplace, and I would note that we are heavily involved in the H1N1 vaccine manufacturing, and that is occurring in our Mountain View facility. The second product that we make is called Synagis, and it's for the prevention and treatment of respiratory syncytial virus, RSV as it's more commonly known. RSV is the leading cause of hospitalization in children under the age of 1, and unfortunately is the leading cause of viral death in children under the age of 5. The good news is that it can be prevented. We'd like to thank the legislature for its earlier support this year of Senate Concurrent Resolution 18 by Senator Elaine Alquist, which declared March as RSV Awareness Month. Our product Synagis, which is exclusively for premature babies, has evolved since it was first introduced 11 years ago. At that time, the drug was administered through an IV in the skull, and it was only administered in a hospital. Currently, it's a 5 to 6 intramuscular injection, much less painful not only for the patient, but for the parent who has to witness this. It is administered in a doctor's office or through home health care agency. And in order for the baby to be fully protected against RSV, there must be strict compliance with the injection schedule and the treatment regimen. And an infant, even if they miss 1 dose or start treatment late, they do run a high risk of contracting RSV. More than 70% of Synagis last year was administered through specialty pharmacy. Approximately 20% was through hospitals, and the remaining 10% was in physicians' offices. But I think the latter 2 examples, as we've seen, as others have, is declining in favor of specialty pharmacy, and you're really seeing a partnership between the physicians, the specialists, and others exclusively with specialty pharmacy. As you've heard from previous witnesses, biologics are complex medicines that are markedly different from traditional chemistry-based pharmaceutical drugs and how they are developed, manufactured, stored, handled, and of course, purpose of today and why I'm here, how they are administered. Our product, which is exclusively for babies, cannot simply be filled at our neighborhood drugstore. Specialty pharmacy and the medical treatment management services that they provide are key to ensuring patient access to this important drug. I want to bring to the committee's attention an issue that arose last year in the Central Valley. I think it underscores that this could have happened in anyone's district, and that this really becomes a patient access issue if the specialty market was to cease operation. Again, we're talking about the Central Valley, where there is not the best air quality, and RSV is a seasonal drug which mirrors the influenza season, usually October through March. Synagis is administered during this time, and as I mentioned, it's a 5 to 6 intramuscular injection administered every 28 days. Approximately 2 weeks before the season started last year in the Central Valley, we had a specialty pharmacy who, citing reasons for the uncertainty in the Medi-Cal reimbursement, pulled out of the marketplace. There was approximately 100 babies that were identified by their personal pediatricians to be administered Synagis throughout the season, and those 100 babies went without doses in October, November, and December. Fortunately, our friends at ITSRX and others were willing to step in, wanting to service these babies, wanting to ensure patient access, and we were able to get these babies their doses. Albeit it was late, but they did get the doses, and we did have some experiences where babies were hospitalized late in the season with RSV because they had missed those critical doses in the beginning. It is imperative that the committee and the legislature recognize the services that are provided by specialty pharmacy. We appreciate Mr. Hill, Senator Corbett, and Mr. Fletcher for bringing this to the attention, and we look forward to working with you in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone? I have a couple of questions, and you alluded to it with the issue of the Valley and the problem with the pharmacies not being able to provide that, the drug. If the pharmacies were no longer able to do this, what would the state do as an alternative? How would it work, or would it?
You asked the million-dollar question. Like I said, when our product first came to market, it was exclusively administered in hospitals. The product and many other biologics have evolved and have taken these products out of the hospital administration, out of the physician setting. And so we sort of scratch our heads wondering if specialty pharmacy was to disappear, how would we treat these babies and how would we treat other patients who rely heavily on biologics?
So it could really limit access for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I do think it becomes a patient access issue.
What do you see the legislature's role in keeping that, or making sure that this service is still being provided?
I think a acknowledgement, or I can combine my two words here, a recognition as well as an acknowledgement of specialty pharmacy, and when pharmacy is looked at, that it's not a one-size-fits-all. Obviously, we know that tough choices need to be made when it comes to cuts and how you balance the state's budget, but that there's an acknowledgement.
But what percentage of your business is biologics?
100%.
100%. Okay. And these drugs are obviously more costly than normal drugs. How costly are they? I mean, just give us an example of some of them, if you could.
If you want, I can speak on that.
Mm-hmm.
Therapies are typically range from $1,000 a month to $10,000 a month, depending on what the therapy is. Often, some of the injectables, self-injectables, will be a little bit on the lower side, closer to $1,000 either per dose, and that's either administered once every 2 weeks or once a month.
Wow. Thank you. Mr. Anderson, did you have a question?
Due to the nature of these products and they're not being generic, if you were to compare yourself to a brick-and-mortar pharmacy, would they normally be stocking these types of products with the amount of usage that you're getting and the fact that they're so specialized? Are these therapies normally stocked, or is it more conducive to a specialty pharmacy?
Definitely more conducive to a specialty pharmacy. Often the retail pharmacies will not stock these products, some of them due to lack of refrigerators, because a lot of the products are all refrigerated. Others because they don't want to take on the overhead of stocking these medications, where we know that we're going to have a just-in-time inventory in a specialty pharmacy and be able to get those medications out. So we take on that risk.
Very good. Thank you. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
For the questions. Appreciate your being here today, and the presentation was great.
Thank you.
A unique area of the industry. Our next presenters will be on biosimilars. Jeff again, good to see you, and Barry Brokaw, Teva Pharmaceuticals, USA. Good afternoon again. I think we all have a copy up here also of the biosimilars presentation.
Okay, again, members, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Jeff Ike. I'm a director at Amgen, and this is a neat topic, and I appreciate your taking the time. Amgen is in Thousand Oaks, so we are sort of split between a neutral state in your arm wrestling match, and that actually is a good segue to our position on biosimilars, which is an inherently balanced position. It's a position that I'll talk a little bit about. Just to start, a biologic is a huge protein. It's expressed from a living cell, and it's purified, cultivated, and it eventually has to be injected into the body because it can't survive in the stomach, and it's so large that it needs to go into the body via either an injection, a subcutaneous under the skin injection, or intravenously. That's an important starting point because it makes it's already a very unique kind of medication. A biosimilar is an attempted copy of a biologic. And it works about like this. You see a house, and after seeing the house, you say, I want a house. And so from that, you go back and redraw the blueprints as close as you can to what that house's original blueprints would have looked like. You hire a general contractor who probably is relatively the same as the first general contractor, and you use materials that are relatively close to the materials that were used. But at the end of the day, you do have a slightly different house than the one that you originally modeled. And that's why we use the term biosimilar. These are, in fact, similar, but not identical. And that's in direct contrast to generics, which are and start with an identical drug substance. So a generic version of Tylenol is acetaminophen. It has the same active ingredient, the same drug substance. But with biologics, you can never have the same exact substance because as it's expressed from a living cell and it's a protein, it's always going to be somewhat different. It's just the nature of working with biosciences versus chemistry. So I think having started there, maybe an important place to take the discussion is the fact that there can be no true generics. And the FDA, the World Health Organization, the European Medicines Association, which is the European version of the FDA, have all opined that this is the case. These are, in fact, similar but different. And you can see, just looking at this, that there is a huge size discrepancy. I've actually blown up the aspirin molecule, but they're on the order of 100 times, as much as 100 times larger. They have a protein has many living or is made from living cells. It has slight variations in the backbone, at the way that it folds, and you can see it's a very complex structure that folds over on itself in just a particular way. And it's also very difficult to characterize, so it's hard to map. It's three-dimensional, it's very complex. Not only is it difficult to characterize it just analytically, it's also difficult to characterize what it does in the body. In many cases, it can do a number of things, and I would refer to drugs that are used for rheumatoid arthritis, that the same molecule can do a number of different things in the body and treat different diseases. So it is a very unique kind of medicine, and I think that from that starting point, that's the beginning of this debate. Now, Amgen's position on this, as I said, is very much in the middle. It's very much balanced. We believe that there is a role for copies of these drugs, these similar drugs. It can increase access to life-saving and life-altering treatments, and it can also reduce cost. And we think that those are things that are important in especially this time. But we think that we're supportive of a proposal to allow the approval of this that also upholds the science. We also think that it needs to uphold patient safety, and that's probably the most important and the paramount consideration in any policy on bringing these into the market. Finally, we think it's important, as I spoke to earlier, to ensure that we can continue to innovate, that the innovations that start in universities and research institutions can continue to make it through those very expensive clinical trials and continue to come to market to treat diseases for which there are no cures and there are no therapies right now. And we think that that's a very, very important consideration of a pathway. So I'm going to talk today about not the policy, but just the science, because I think this is the most fun thing to talk about. It's really the most interesting, and truly it should be central to any discussion of biosimilars. I gave the analogy of building a house, but But maybe now, in somewhat more specificity, you can see that what's happening in these processes is we take a gene and we alter it, and we move that gene into a cell, and we put that cell in a bath, if you will, of food, so that in the proper temperature, the right amount of oxygen, and we allow that cell to replicate. And because they replicate identically, you're getting multiple versions of the same exact cell that we've genetically engineered. And then we send a signal, and the signal says, okay, give us the protein. And the cells, almost on demand, will create the protein of interest, which will eventually become the drug. Now, that is all happening in this big, big bath. And from that bath, we have to get rid of all of the food. The cells have waste. We have to get rid of the cells themselves. And we have to harvest that protein that's going to be that life-saving medication. And then we purify, and we purify, and we go to great lengths to make sure that we only take the best and a very small segment of the product that is going to be as close to identical as you can possibly get within the science that we have today. And a company like Amgen spends tremendous amounts of time making sure that we ensure the highest quality product that goes into each and every vial, because we know that inevitably it's for a patient that's really sick and that needs exactly the right kind of medicine. When you change this process in any way, shape, or form, because they're living cells, things can change. So we have facilities in California where we've manufactured a number of these proteins, and if we try to manufacture those in Colorado, something changes. It's altitude. It's the concentration of oxygen, and it makes a difference in how the cells create proteins. So just changing a location from California to Colorado makes a significant difference in the cells and the way that they live and the way that they produce proteins. That's how sensitive this is. As we purify these, if we change a light bulb in one of the purification systems, it makes a difference on the profile that comes through. Why do we know this? Because our commitment to patients is sacrosanct. We test this over and over and over to find out if any change in a process has an effect, and then we further go with our scientists and our physicians to understand if it has a clinically meaningful effect. Now, that is really important in terms of process change, to realize how sensitive these changes can be. So, in Europe, they have biosimilars, and they've had them since 2004. It's been a really good experience for us as a company that markets our products in Europe to begin to understand what's happened in the European experience. And I'll offer, just to share a little bit with you, that this is a very positive experience. The Europeans have approached this with science first, all things second. Science and patients first, all things second. So what we see here is that in the European Union, they have evaluated 11 different proteins that are attempted copies of a biosimilar. And in some cases, they've approved them. In 6 cases, there have been approvals. And in 5 cases, there have been either rejections or withdrawals. In each case, both the approval and or the rejection has been on the basis of clinical data. So here's what we've learned. In one case, human growth hormone, which was discovered here by Genentech in the late 70s and early 80s, was copied, and in the clinical trials to determine whether the drug was safe and effective, up to 60%, about 57% of the children who were in the study, because it's for growth hormone, it's a pediatric study, developed antibodies to the medicine. So I talked about earlier how these are very large molecules. They also generate an immune response. They're big enough that the body recognizes them when they're injected and says, I like that or I don't like that. And if the answer is I don't like that, then the immune system does something about it. These antibodies developed in the children between the 3, 6, and 9-month point. And what's important to note there is it didn't just happen the day of the injection where you could just say, look, something wasn't right with that injection. It happens over time. And that's also the nature of biologics, that these can be latent responses. So it's important to note. Now, in this case, we were able to go back and look and the company that was filing this was able to determine where the problem was. It was a purification problem. Some of the cells themselves that were expressing the protein, particles had gotten into the actual drug substance. So they corrected that, and the drug went on to be approved. And it's also, that's a success story. And we think that that's the right way to approach this. As another example, we have an example of some insulins. Insulin also created by Genentech here in California. And this molecule was an attempted copy at a rapid insulin. Now, what happens is insulin goes in and it helps a diabetic lower their glucose level. Well, in this case, the drug had a 45% higher glucose lowering effect than its reference or its attempted copy or its attempted reference product. And what's important to note there is if you're a diabetic, all of a sudden you have a drug that's purported to be the same that has a 45% faster method of action. And that also resulted in a lower duration that the drug was effective. And that drug was rejected or withdrawn. I guess this one was withdrawn. And that's actually fine. We think that's, again, the benefits of a science-based process. So in terms of our position, we support that these should come to market, but we think that the science has to lead the way on issues with biologics. So in summary, we think that they're similar but not identical. We think that along with the FDA, the World Health Organization, and the European Medicines Agency. We think that these small differences can have a clinically meaningful effect, and it's important to think very carefully about these as that differentiates them from generics. And we think that the European pathway or the European approval system is science-based, it protects patients, and it supports innovation. And we think that that's an important place to start. With that, any questions for me? Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Mr. Brokaw.
Questions? Seeing none, there may be when Barry finishes.
Okay.
Maybe for you. Thank you, Jeff.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, members. Pleasure to be here. I'm Barry Brokaw on behalf of Teva Pharmaceuticals USA, which is the world's largest generic pharmaceutical company. We have headquarters in Israel. The company was created in 1901. We have facilities in Europe, Pennsylvania, and California. And if Mr. Harmon and Ms. Harkey were here, I would say they're in Orange County, which is where they are. In Irvine, we have 856 employees in that facility. And I'm glad to be here because I think generic companies afford a great opportunity to provide accessible health care and accessible and affordable biosimilars, biologics. The position I'm representing today is that of Teva, but it's generally shared by all the generic pharmaceutical manufacturers. So I'm speaking for a broader audience in that perspective. At Teva, we have more than 400 FDA-approved products for sale. We produce 1 million units of prescription drugs per day, 30 billion doses per year. 1 out of 4 generic prescriptions in the U.S. is a Teva product, and 1 out of 4 generic prescriptions. 1 out of 4 prescriptions in the U.S. is a generic product. 1 out of 7 is provided by Teva, and we also have branded products as well. The healthcare costs of prescription drugs are differentiated between brand products and generic products. There were $291 billion of sales of drugs in 2008, and generic drugs accounted for $48 billion of those sales. The average price of a prescription drug in 2008 was very interesting as well. A branded product, and we're talking about a 30-day supply, was $137.90. The average cost for a generic product was $35.22. You can see the huge difference here. In 2008, generic drugs account for 69% of prescriptions, but only 16% of the dollars spent. And there's a reason for a generic drug in this country and its availability in this world. And principal to that is safety of generic drugs. Generics have the same active ingredients as their branded counterparts. Generics have the same strength and dosage as a brand counterpart. Generic manufacturing...
Just to clarify, though, that's generics, right? Not
generics.
Biologics.
I'm not talking about biologics, and I'll get to that. We share a lot in common, by the way. Generic manufacturing facilities are inspected by the FDA, and they must meet the same standard as branded products. FDA generic approval process is as vigorous as it is for brands, and more than $2.6 billion generic prescriptions were dispensed in 2008. 7 of the 10 biggest drug manufacturers are generic companies. And what we are seeking is a federal pathway for biologics or biosimilars. The reason for that is the cost of biologics is very high, and they provide a phenomenal product. There's no question about this. Incredible breakthroughs we've seen in cancer and other autoimmune programs due to biologics. But the average annual spending growth from 2000 to 2007 for biologics was 16%, and it was 3.7% for drugs. And in the 1990s, the most expensive cancer drug was Taxol, and the cost of that drug in the 1990s was $4,000 per year. The most expensive cancer drugs today that are sold are biologics. They're very effective, but Avastin for colorectal cancer is $42,960 per course, Mr. Hill. Herceptin for brain cancer is $27,990 per course. Tykerb, which is for breast cancer, is $16,575 per course. And Gemzar for cancer is $2,500 to $5,000 per month. And the cost to federal government is going up because of the wide use of biologics, and we are grateful that they are being used. But the costs are significant. In 2007, the top 6 Medicare Part B drugs were biologics, and that increased from $4.1 billion to $7.3 billion in 1 year alone. That was a 70% increase. So we're seeing those costs continue to escalate. We are seeking a pathway to enter in this field to do what we do for generic drugs in the field of biosimilars or biologics. And there are 3 bills that are moving in Congress right now that will address this issue. There's the Waxman measure and Schumer-Collins that are moving through on addressing a pathway for biologics or biosimilars for the approval. The Eshu-Barton bill, and there's a Senate committee markup that was put together in 2007. And the key elements, we think, to the solution of allowing the availability of biosimilars or biologics is a science-driven pathway. And we think the FDA should have discretion as to what is needed to determine efficacy and safety. We think that pathway ought to be in the law, and we think that will lead to a solid outcome. We think there ought to be a timely resolution of patent disputes and a reasonable period for exclusivity for the products that Amgen and other makers come forth with. You know, we understand the need for a return on investment. That's appropriate, it's prudent, it makes sense. We're all businesses, but we also have to address the affordability issues. I think exclusivity is important, and exclusivity bars the FDA from approving a drug during the exclusivity period. It's more valuable than a patent, and we think that that's an issue that will also be addressed in the federal legislation. The industry, by the way, is talking about a 14-year exclusivity provision. The Eshu-Barton bill has 14.5 years in it. The Waxman measure has 5 years in it. The Senate markup from 2007 has 12 years in it. And determining what the appropriate time for that exclusivity of those patents and the time period that should be allowed for making biosimilars available to the broad public at a substantially reduced cost, we believe, are critical to address. And that will determine whether genetics are going to be available. So we have a chasm that needs to be bridged, and I see opportunity in what the previous speaker just said, because we believe in a scientifically based driven decision in this matter. We think that there should be an appropriate return of investment, as I said, and we think that there should be a period of time for generic biosimilars to be introduced into the marketplace. It's interesting to note that President Obama has also endorsed a pathway for a biosimilar adoption program. He did so this week. So we think that because we represent consumers who need access to these health cares at an affordable price, that the availability of these fabulous drugs through their biosimilar approaches would go far to addressing accessibility and reduced costs in health care. So we thank you for having the opportunity to present testimony today.
Thank you, Mr. Brokaw. Questions? I have a couple. Barry, what, two actually, in terms of the generic drugs that we see today, what is this? I mean, they're not exactly the same. I mean,
Well,
the chemical compound is the same, but aren't there other differences in terms of the reaction time or the absorption time or something? I mean, isn't there an ability to frame that in something different?
Generally, they have the same. They all have the same active ingredient as the branded product. They have the same strength and dosage as the branded counterpart. There have been some instances where absorption levels may be a little bit different, but they're generally identical. I mean, they are identical in terms of their active ingredients and their makeup, and they go through the same process in terms of the approval that a branded drug goes through with the FDA.
And in looking at the biologics, is it your expectation that when they are biosimilars that are created from that, that they would be identical as well in that sense, and or is there some flexibility allowance that you think should be part of that?
Well, the outcome is what we're concerned with. The effectiveness is what we're concerned with. The safety, the efficacy, and they, as was expressed earlier, are essentially identical. And the FDA is going to establish that process for the approval.
Are you comfortable with, I guess, the comment was...
Just to be clear, the essentially identical question is for generics, which are common pharmaceuticals or small molecules. I think the nature of